to dig into sort of what that, I don't know, where some of those tools come from. I mean, and it's important because in this sort of day and age, especially around ATMPs and some of the new, more complex modalities, I hear from my perch as an industry observer, I hear all the time that the process is the product, right? In so many of these new modalities. And being, given that if the process is the product, then process development is certainly more important than ever. CMC's, packaging of process development parameters and quality parameters and so on is more important than ever, right? Like if the process is the product, then those things can't happen as a skunk works operation behind the scenes anymore. So that being the case, there's a higher burden on development and manufacturing equipment to do its job, and people, standardized in a standardized, uniform, controllable way, and thus on development and CMC staffers. What are those, I guess, tools? Blair, you mentioned, specifically the advance of information systems tools and data management tools. Are these tools that are proprietary? Are they homegrown? Is there a cottage industry of providers out there that are supplying emerging biotech with tools to manage this data and facilitate that interaction?
It's a combination. So there's a growing industry that comes more from a tech background that is developing some of these software platforms that they're out there rolling out and trying to sell to organizations. But also, we invest quite a bit of time and energy, monies into developing internal platforms to do data analytics. So the Minerva in general has spent quite a bit on digital infrastructure and having a lot of digital integrators and developers on staff to really develop novel ways of looking at data, or different ways to look at data that allows us to get more information out of it, as opposed to just your standard, generate a graph out of Excel or comparators just out of JUMP or something like that. Not that we don't use them all, but it helps. Now they're able to help pull a lot of the information together and reach across the different disciplines, to clinical correlations and things of that nature.
Brian, I'm interested in your perspective on this because another common refrain that I hear is that for all its intelligence and scientific and technical prowess, the biotech space, biopharma in particular, is behind the curve on IT systems administration, IT systems integration, these data analytics packages and infrastructure. In your role as a consultant at BK Pharmaceutical Consulting, you have exposure to, myriad new and emerging pharma and biopharma companies. What's your experience? Is what Blair's describing moving down the field, becoming the norm, or is there still a lot of that hard notebook kind of manual conference room conversation taking place to keep PD and CMC on the same page?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it depends actually on the size and resources of the organization that you're talking about. So at some smaller companies that I've worked with in the past, it is basically, the conference room and the notebooks kinds of things. Some of the large organizations that I've consulted for over the years, they try to be really attuned to the latest developments in technology, the data science, the analytics, and even in a few cases, artificial intelligence-driven kinds of platforms to achieve advances in getting a hold on understanding, the manufacturing processes and even using some of the predictive technologies of some of the statistical softwares to help to optimize and refine the manufacturing processes. So I think it tends to be based on the size of the company and its ability to financially support those advanced technologies.
Gotcha. All right. I'm going to take a couple audience questions before we get to our first polling question, where we're going to pose a question to the audience. But we'll take a couple of these. Brian, you just commented on this actually. It's like Alla wondered what are some struggles a small to medium sized biotech company finds when it comes to process development and CMC requirements. So you just talked about it from a tech perspective, but Brian and Blair, maybe you could both kind of address other, even if it's not technical or data exchange related, what some of the common struggles to small, new and emerging biotech companies are when it comes to process development and CMC.
You want to go first, Blair?
Yep. From my perspective, it's always been what are, especially in some of these new modalities, what are the requirements? Because they're not clear what always the requirements are. So for smaller organizations, trying to define those becomes a combination of well-connected consultants, well-connected networks you have, as well as trying to get information and feedback from very definitive FDA type meetings that you can request. So those are some of the ways we get them. But then it's generating enough data to support what your release criteria are going to be, or whatever you're going after. Generating enough data, and are you doing this externally or internally? Obviously, externally creates some longer lead times, and you have to be very smart about how you set up those statements of work. Versus internally, you have a little more latitude to do a little more flux and discovery as data comes about. But it's really generating that data and getting enough of it together that's meaningful to support your conclusions and the direction you want to drive. Then having really good scientific rationale of why you're driving there. Those are important. You can't not discount that. You need to really have that scientific rationale together to support your interpretation of the regulations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here's a question from Satya. There seems to be a lot of confusion as to the quality in the early stages of CMC development. So quality in the early stages of CMC development, is there she wants the fail proof, guys. It's funny. There was I mentioned to you that our guests had an opportunity to ask questions or ask what they, reference what they'd like to learn about in the registration process. And I did want you to know that Tim actually typed in that he wanted to learn about the secrets of the universe. And this kind of falls in. So I hope you guys are up for that challenge, because it kind of falls into that realm, right? What's the fail-proof methodology that sponsor organizations can adopt to ensure success? So I don't know that there's a fail-proof, but maybe you can both comment on quality in the early stages of CMC development and best practices.
So the quality of it comes back to first really understanding your molecule. So we're really working with discovery to understand the critical attributes of your molecule that make it function, that lead to its mechanism of action. Mm-hmm. You really have to understand that to be able to then drive the experiments and process development that are going to ensure those quality attributes are incorporated into the molecule, whether it's a post-translational modification, it's a purification stream, whatever it may be. You have to really understand your molecule to be able to start setting those quality attributes. Then it becomes iterative as you go on to better and better define what the quality of that looks like. There is no fail-safe mechanism to it. And you have to be open to, as the data develops and your process develops, to recognizing when you need to change strategies or revamp what the quality success looks like at that point.
Yeah. Brian, wanted to give you an opportunity to weigh in there if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Blair. And, this is part of that sort of crucial CMC process development kind of interaction feedback loop, where as you gain more information about the process and understand how you can achieve a certain level of quality that's aligned with your quality target product profile, then that kind of information can then fuel the refinement and development of more CQAs to provide better governance over the production of a high quality drug product. So it's all kind of a nice sort of iterative feedback loop as you go through the development life cycle.